Commander Zixthar had witnessed the fall of civilizations. He had seen stars collapse and planets torn asunder by gravitational forces beyond comprehension. In his 3 centuries of service to the Galactic Concordat, nothing had prepared him for this moment. "They're doing it again," his tactical officer whispered, all 4 of his eyes fixed on the viewing screen. The human vessel drifted in the void, its hull breached in 17 places, atmosphere venting like blood from fatal wounds. By every logical calculation, the crew should have abandoned ship 40 minutes ago. The distress beacon should have been screaming across subspace frequencies. Instead, there was only silence and that damned human stubbornness. Zixthar's mandibles clicked, and what his human liaison had taught him was called frustration. He had offered rescue 3 times. 3 times the humans had refused. "Patch me through again," he commanded. The crackling voice of Captain Sarah Chen filled the bridge, punctuated by the sound of sparking circuits and emergency klaxons. "Concordat vessel, we appreciate your concern, but we've got this handled. Captain Chen, your ship is dying. Your oxygen reserves are at 14%. Your engines are offline. You have no logical path to survival." There was a pause, then something that sounded suspiciously like laughter. "Commander, with all due respect, we've been in worse spots. My engineer says she can reroute power from life support to the main drive. We'll limp to the nearest station. You will suffocate before you travel half a light year. Then I guess we better work fast." The channel closed. Zixthar's scales rippled with agitation. This was what the galaxy had come to dread about humans. Not their weapons, though those were formidable. Not their tactical brilliance, though they had turned the tide of the Korthax War. Not even their bizarre capacity for violence when provoked. No, what terrified the Galactic Concordat, what made even the warrior clans of Draxus Prime uneasy, was the humans' absolute refusal to accept defeat. The Concordat had rules for warfare, for negotiation, for survival itself. When a ship was crippled beyond 30% functionality, the crew evacuated. When a battle reached a certain casualty threshold, retreat was mandated. When negotiations reached an impasse, arbitration was sought. These were the logical frameworks that had maintained galactic peace for millennia. Humans had read those rules, nodded politely, and proceeded to ignore every single one. Zixthar remembered the siege of Proxima 7. The human colony had been surrounded, outnumbered 40-1 with no hope of reinforcement. The Korthax had sent surrender terms. Standard protocol suggested the colonists would yield within hours. They held for 4 months. 4 months of improvised weapons, of children running ammunition, of farmers becoming soldiers. They shouldn't have lasted 4 days. When relief finally arrived, the Korthax commander had been found in his tent, staring at casualty reports he couldn't comprehend. He had lost 3,000 troops to 500 humans who refused to acknowledge mathematics. "Sir," his tactical officer interrupted his thoughts. "The human vessel is maneuvering. Impossible." Yet there it was on the display. The crippled ship's emergency thrusters firing in calculated bursts, spinning the vessel in a slow rotation. Through the breaches in the hull, Zixthar could see figures in emergency suits, spacewalking across the exterior, welding plates torn from interior bulkheads over the larger holes. "They're cannibalizing their own ship for repairs," his science officer observed, her voice tinged with something between horror and admiration. 3 hours passed. The human crew worked in shifts, some welding, others inside rerouting power systems that were never designed to function in such configurations. Captain Chen's voice periodically updated them on progress, her tone never wavering from professional confidence even as her oxygen gauge surely crept toward 0. When the human ship's main drive suddenly flared to life, every member of Zixthar's bridge crew fell silent. "They did it," someone whispered. By the ancestral void, they actually did it. The human vessel began limping away, its trajectory set for the Kepler station, 3 light-years distant. At their current speed with intermittent power, they would arrive in approximately 6 days. Their oxygen would last perhaps 5. "Pursue them," Zixthar ordered. "Match their speed." "Sir?" "They will not accept rescue, but we can be there when their bodies require it regardless of what their minds desire." He paused, watching the battered human ship growing smaller on the display. "And perhaps we can engineer a convenient accident that deposits emergency oxygen canisters in their path." His tactical officer's eyes gleamed with understanding. "An unfortunate malfunction in our cargo bay doors?" "Precisely. one that we will take great care to report through proper channels. In approximately 6 days, as his crew moved to execute the plan, Zixthar settled back into his command chair. This was what the galaxy had learned to dread about humans. Not that they would fight, but that they would never ever stop fighting. They didn't surrender. They didn't accept defeat. They didn't acknowledge impossible odds. They simply kept going. And somehow, impossibly, insanely, they usually succeeded. 5 days later, the human vessel limped into Kepler Station on fumes and determination. Captain Chen's after-action report noted with dry humor the fortuitous discovery of oxygen canisters floating in their path. She had recommended Commander Zixthar for a commendation in creative interpretation of non-interference protocols. Zixthar had accepted it with as much dignity as one could muster while being thoroughly outmaneuvered by a species that treated the word impossible as a personal challenge. The galaxy had many wonders, many terrors, many mysteries yet unsolved. But nothing, absolutely nothing, was quite as dreadful as a human who simply refused to quit.